guys, welcome back to All Things Dog. This is episode 11, and today we are just going to go over some myths about, mostly about positive training. Positive training is greatly misunderstood. There's a lot of labels involved, and there's definitely some myths about what to expect and what we do as trainers who would be classified as positive trainers. So, Crystal, you want to go ahead and start off with the first myth?
Sure. So one of my favorite myths to listen to is that positive training is permissive. So what people are getting at is that we just, if the dog won't eat a cookie, then we just let them do whatever until they eat a cookie. And then when they're done eating a cookie, then we carry on with life. There's a lot more to it than eating cookies, y'all. Positive training is not at all about cookies or treats or, any of that simplistic idea that you'll always have to have cookies on you and your dog will always be working for the cookie in your hand. One of the big things that I tell clients is there's a difference between bribery and training. If you're waving a cookie in your dog's face, then we are then bribing your dog, and that is not training. So that is not what we do either. One of the big pieces that we really work with our clients first is really establishing, I work with the clicker a lot, and I'm sure Diane does too, work with a clicker or with a verbal marker cue, good or yes. And very quickly establishing that good, yes, or click means a cookie is coming. Mm-hmm. So not, hey, check out my cookies, let's do a thing. It's, let's do a thing. That is what I'm looking for. Let me get your reinforcement. Yeah. So that's a big piece of making sure that your mechanics are very clear, that your dog understands the process. Yeah. And even when you're working through, like, as you get to those more advanced pieces, like we even then work in like life rewards. Like if you sit at the door, then you get to go outside. If you sit in your crate, you get to come out of your crate. If you sit in the car, then I will then let you out of the car. We're not, there's nothing permissive about positive reinforcement training. My dogs all have very clear rules, and if we don't follow the rules, then we don't get to do the things. If Cargo can't let go of the toy, then I stand there and hold her collar until she puts her brain back in her head and can give me the toy. If my dogs can't sit at the front door, then we don't walk outside for a walk. Like, those are all there's nothing permissive about that. If you can't do the thing, you don't get the reward.
It's funny. I feel like, Nellie goes out and about with us to a lot of different places. And every once in a while, somebody will say to me like, hey, I thought you, did like that positive stuff. Like, because I do, especially when we're going out in public, like, if I have to leave a brewery or whatever to take her outside to go to the bathroom, we hang out there and I wait. I just stand there by the door, obviously not in the way of anybody, but I will stand there and wait until she turns around and looks back at me. She can sit down and she's got her brains in her head. And I do that going into the place and going out, because I'm certainly not going to let her tear off at the end of her leash and go bombard everyone, who's sitting near the door. I am not permissive with her. I'm probably, I'm definitely the opposite of permissive with a ton of things. I get super angry when I see people who, I'm sorry, I'm using this as an example, but it does make me angry. When you have your dog on a flexi lead and they're running all over the place at the end of the lead with a ton of people around, you're not paying attention to them, you're talking or you're on your phone, your dog is wrapping themselves around and jumping on random people, or you have your dog off lead at the beach and your dog is running up to every single blanket and person they see, spraying them with sand when those people were relaxing and reading a book. That stuff drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Not permissive with my dogs. They have a great life. They are completely spoiled for sure, but we have lots of rules that they need to follow. They don't get to do fun things unless they can think. And it's not even a punishment. It's just the way life is. If you can't behave, if you can't do the things, then I can't take you to these places. So you need to show me you can do it, and then we can go do the fun things. If you can't listen to me on the beach, I am not taking you off of a long line. We might even go straight home if you really can't hang, because it's not fun for me and it's not fair to the other people around. It's just, yeah, I mean, even totally aside from cookies, like, there are rules. I don't have that many rules in my house, to be honest. My dogs are allowed on the couch, they're allowed on the beds, you know. I mean, they're not allowed to go digging through the trash and stuff, though. I'm not just like letting them have a free-for-all. But they do get to relax and just pretty much do whatever they want in our house. But they don't, like, if I'm working, they're not allowed to come and jump on me. If I'm working, you're laying down on your bed. There are rules. They don't run our lives.
Yeah. And that's part of the training process too, is not just going, okay, my dog can't handle this, but I want to go socialize with people, so I'm going to just let my dog run amok because they can't listen. It's self-control on my part too. Like, if my dog can't listen and can't handle the environment, then I'm going to either make it a training opportunity, make a training plan and put that training plan to use so that I can reach my goal of being able to go and socialize with people, or I'm gonna leave my dog at home. I'm not going to bring them, if they can't handle it, and until they are able to handle it. Yeah. I'm gonna train it until we can do the fun things. But until you can do the fun things, then I am going to be the responsible adult in the situation and make sure that I have management in place in order to keep you successful. And sometimes that means staying at home.
Yeah. And I think too, that kind of leads into another myth around the cookies that we give out. Again, I take my dogs, honestly, I take Nellie to breweries a lot because they're dog friendly here. We have friends there. It's low key, it's conducive to me bringing her. But when I bring her those places, I always bring her kibble with me. I bring her dinner with me. And a lot of people, their thought about positive training is, oh, well, you're going to need cookies forever. I don't want to need cookies forever. Could Nellie get through going to the brewery and be totally fine and be one of, if not the best behaved dog in the room? Absolutely. But I do like to bring her dinner with me. One, because she needs her dinner anyway. She needs to eat. And two, because I don't know what we're going to encounter when we get there, and some things are difficult for her. So why not bring it with me? I have it there if I need it to train with her through something. We went the other day and there was an adorable little baby corgi puppy, super cute. And Nellie really wanted to be friends, but Nellie cannot be friends with the little baby corgi puppy because she plays too rough. And so I needed her to sit quietly next to me and lay down. She could sit and pout and make, adorable puppy eyes at the puppy all she wanted to. I didn't care about that. But she needed to be near me and quiet and not pulling on her leash. And I do that with a little bit of kibble. I'd rather carry her kibble with me than remote for a shock collar or even, if you have a toddler and you're taking them out, if you have a toddler and you're bringing them to a brewery, I'm sure you're bringing crayons and coloring books and snacks and juice boxes and all of these things because that's what they need to get through that. And sometimes your dogs need that too. The brewery might be exciting for her for a little bit of time while we're there, but she gets bored too. That's not even really a training thing. But we have to train through it sometimes. I know you're bored, but you can't go run and jump on the couch here because the couch here is not for dogs, it's for people. So you're going to sit here on your leash and I'll toss you cookies, or, sometimes we'll do some hand touches and that kind of thing to keep her entertained. It's not that you have to have cookies on you all the time for your dog to listen to you, but I do recognize that that's a situation that can be difficult, and depending on how many dogs are there, depending on how many people are there, depending on how many kids and babies. Anytime Nellie is around kids and babies, I'm just always feeding that because I want her to have the best association with kids and babies. It's not that I have to have these treats on me for her to listen to me. She listens to me. We have a good working relationship. I've fed into that bank. I can make the withdrawals on it. She listens to me. But I recognize that some things are really hard and I want to pay her for those. So I use her dinner, which she has to eat anyway. It's not, I'm not waving a steak in front of her face to get her to sit. She doesn't get treats for sitting anymore. Like, that's not
right, absolutely. And that's another big piece of the training puzzle that I put together for my clients also is we want to reward the effort. So at the very beginning, your dog doesn't know how to sit or doesn't know how to nose target. So we're rewarding them trying to figure it out. But like Cargo is 3. She's been sitting and nose targeting since she was 9 weeks old. We don't get cookies for that anymore. Yeah. I expect more of her. And when we're on a walk or when we're on the trails at the park, like if there is one person walking by, I will throw a food scatter into the woods and let her find the food. But the rule is go find the food and do not bother that person. But if there is like a group of people or if there's a dog coming, then her job is to lay there quietly while the people pass. And then she gets a snack and we keep on going.
Yep.
When I was training this, it was cookies for laying down. It was cookies for staying. It was cookies for engaging with me while the person passed. It was cookies if the person talked to me. Now it's, I expect you to move over when I tell you, to lay down when I tell you, and stay there until the person passes. Yeah. And then when you're done, you get your release cookie and we carry on with life. So then then we're not, it's not you're doing it because I have a cookie.
Yeah.
I do cookie, but I'm going to make you work harder and harder for it.
Yes. And just like you said earlier too, like with the environmental rewards, a lot of times in that situation when it's just 1 or 2 people walking by, if it wasn't that difficult for Nellie, I'll usually have her like station on something, just hang out and sit there and wait. And then her reward isn't even a cookie. It's that she gets to go and keep playing. She gets to go ahead and have the full length of the leash again, the long line again. She gets to go back on the trail and continue. That's her reward. It's not always cookies. But cookies, I guess this kind of leads into almost a different other myth, basically, is that I try to explain to clients too that cookies are really a communication tool. It's not even so much, because we definitely we're rewarding effort for sure, but giving a dog a cookie is the most clear thing you can do to tell them that they did the right thing, they're on the right track, and to keep going. We can say, saying yes and good, we use those as verbal markers, but they just mean the cookie is coming. The food is a communication tool. It's telling your dog what do you want, what they did that you like. I don't know. Yeah.
Yep.
Food is useful.
Yep.
It's not just about throwing cookies at dogs. There's more there's way more stuff going on there too, that if we had all day, we could go on.
Yeah. We could get real nerdy about this stuff and it could go on for a very long time. And if you guys would like us to get really nerdy about this, we can definitely do that. Just let us know.
Yeah, we can go all through why we use food and what types of food we use and when we use it, when we don't use it. There's so much.
Yeah, we could go through the 4 quadrants of reinforcement and punishment and positive punishment and all of that, class conditioning and opposite conditioning.
We'll probably touch on that one a little bit in this episode too, but
yeah, we'll try not to derail into like super nerdy science.
Yeah. So another myth that definitely goes along with is positive permissive is that we just ignore bad behavior. So Crystal, you want to touch on that one?
I have very strong, powerful dogs. Nothing gets ignored. You know, my neighbor, if you guys follow me on Instagram or Facebook, my neighbor got a dog right before Thanksgiving. And so his dog is widely untrained. And so his dog likes to bark at our fence line. And you better believe that the very first time my dogs ran over there to bark at that fence, I was on top of them. There is no running and barking at the fence line at my house. That is a punishable offense 100% of the time. And now I just, you know, if they start to bark or if I hear him out, I just have to say, hey, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to do that. And I don't have another problem with them. But because I was on top of it the very first time and every time that it happened, then they knew that that was not an acceptable behavior.
Yeah. Quickly just go back and say, you said that is a punishable behavior. Can you just talk about what you mean by that?
Yes, absolutely. So in my house, if you are running the fence line and I call you and you do not come off of the fence line, I will go and collect you and put you in the house. You are done playing. I will absolutely 100% of the time run over there, collect you however I need to, and drag your butt into the house, and you're in the house until you decide that you're going to listen again. And that's sort of what we mean by punishable. Like, there's no fear, there's no pain involved. I am just going to make the consequence very clear and consistent.
Yeah.
Every single time that you run the fence, you will get put in the house. Every single time. And if you're not running the fence, then you can stay outside and play and sniff stuff. And we might play ball, or we might, you know, do some training, or we might do something fun. But if you run the fence, I will get you and put you in the house.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And I think this myth comes from, I think it definitely comes from the advice that sometimes we give where we say, okay, when they're doing this, I want you to ignore them. And then the second they stop, I want you to reward that behavior. So we do sometimes ignore small things like a dog pawing at us, or, jumping up is another common one. When we're ignoring them, though, it's not just that we're ignoring them. We are actually changing the consequences, just like Crystal said, with your dog barking and lunging at the fence, whatever. You come in and you bring them inside. So they are not getting that reward of, we are both barking back and forth at each other and it's all craziness. That's, a reward for them. We're removing that reward by bringing them inside. That action has a set of consequences. So when we're talking about, usually when we're saying ignore the dog, at least most of the time that I can think of, we're talking about times where they're looking for attention. And so when you ignore that, you are changing the consequences of that behavior. Them jumping on you no longer gets your attention by you saying, stop that, please stop that, back off. Because when you're doing all of that, you're talking to them, you are giving them attention, you're touching them. These are all things that they want. So by ignoring it, they're not getting the consequence that they wanted. They're not getting that reinforcement. So we're removing that reinforcement. So it isn't just that, like, oh, your dog is counter surfing, just ignore it. That's not what we do. It's not how we operate. When we say to ignore something, we are actually changing the consequences in that, in that behavioral sequence.
Yes. And we make sure that it's part of a training plan. Like, we're considering the next few repetitions. If ignoring the behavior is not getting us the results that we need, then as a trainer, we have to step in and change the training plan. We're not just going to say, oh, you're overexcited, over-aroused Labrador puppy who is clawing your back because they're trying to climb on your head when you come in the door. We're not ignoring that. We're then going to manage that. But but the fluffy, Pomeranian who's like, hey, what's going on? And puts his feet on your legs and then wanders off, we might ignore that.
Yeah, it's my dog. I'm sitting here working and my dog comes up and nudges my elbow because she wants to be pet, that kind of thing. I'm just going to ignore it because as soon as I turn, I'm like, oh, it's okay, go lay down. I just gave her what she wanted. So,
yes. And sometimes you don't mind that. Like sometimes I don't mind if my dog, like if I'm sitting on the couch and Cargo jumps on the couch with me and nudges my elbow, by all means, I will pet you. That's fine. That's a perfect time to be pet. But if she's standing at my office door barking at me because she wants to go outside and play, I'm not getting up.
And when we say ignore these behaviors too, like you said, ignoring them is always followed by also managing so this doesn't happen in the future. And usually other training protocols, things like teaching your dog how to be calm, teaching your dog how to ask for things nicely by doing a sit and eye contact, that kind of thing. So the ignore is just this tiny little piece of it. It's not, but somehow that's all people hear sometimes is, oh, well, they just told me to ignore my dog and it would stop, but it doesn't stop. There's a lot more going on there. It's not just ignoring your dog or ignoring the bad behavior. We do want to ignore those bad behaviors, but we're also working on other levels.
Yeah, and I think management kind of gets lumped in there also, that, oh, we're just managing the situation, so we're ignoring that that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a great myth. Or that, like, positive trainers, they don't, that when you're doing management, you're not training. I mean, that is true. When you're doing management, when we're telling you these things like keeping your dog on a tether or putting up a baby gate so they can't get somewhere they're not supposed to go, those things are not training. It's changing the circumstances, is changing the environment so these bad things don't happen. But again, that's only a piece of the puzzle.
Right, because we are human beings and we understand that people cannot train their dogs 24 hours of the day. So we help them come up with a plan that includes some management so that when you as a human being are mentally ready to train, you can then step into training. But in the meantime, the problem behavior is not continuing to happen. And I think that's kind of where that got skewed a little bit too, is that here is your management. And for some clients, management is all they want to do, like Cargo can flip open the trash can lid, so I lock the trash can lid.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend effort teaching her to ignore the trash can when management works just fine. And so we have to kind of weigh that out too, but that's our responsibility as a trainer, is to make sure that our training plans are as effective and pragmatic as possible, because we are dealing with humans who have lives that do not train all the time.
Yeah, and one of the big management things that we see come up a lot too, that I think gets misinterpreted by people, is when you have a reactive dogs or dogs who aren't doing well on leash, who even just, dogs who pull a lot on leash. A lot of times we'll recommend that you take a break from walks if you can. Give your dog a couple weeks of yard time or off-site walks. And a lot of times that people see that as, we're ignoring the problem or we're just managing it. We're not actually fixing things. But one of the main reasons, especially in that circumstance, that we do that is, one, it's going to give you, the person, a very needed mental break. Especially if you have a reactive dog. It's incredibly draining. It's scary. It feels isolating. It's embarrassing. You need a break from that. You need a break. Your dog needs a break. Those walks aren't fun for them either. Everyone needs a break to get their heads back together, so that then we can move forward with working through things the right way. We don't need to continue practicing all those frustrating, anxiety-ridden, scary behaviors, creating more and more conflict and building on all of that. A lot of times we'll put in management to take the conflict out of everything for a week or two, or sometimes permanently, before we start adding back in manageable levels and training through it. That's not the long-term solution to reactive dogs, is not keep them in their yard forever. That's not what we're doing. But that is the start. That is usually how we start doing things. We just need to get everybody's heads in the game and reset a little bit.
Yep. So that kind of gets into our maybe our final myth,
Sure.
is that positive trainers don't ever let anything unpleasant happen to their dogs, including let them run into traffic or ignore medical advice because the dogs can't handle it.
Don't get shots, all of those.
Yeah. There is definitely a line between can you and have to.
Yes.
You know, Cargo decided for a while that she didn't like getting into the crate in the car. That is a have to. There's no can you get into the crate in the car. You have to get into the crate in the car. Now, some days I would go out and I would let her look around and sniff the front yard, and we'd stand there at the crate in the car and let her think about it for a little while. But after a little while, it was like, okay, we got to go. You have to get in the crate. And so then I would take her by the collar and sort of help her into the crate in the car. She's better now. She just hops into the crate in the car. But there was not a do you want to? It was you have to. We're going to go do a thing and you have to get in the car. I'm sorry. There is no can you right now.
You know, and a lot of times too, we would talk about a management thing where you could take the crate out of your car. You do not have crates that can come out of your car. You have those big. That's not happening. There's no way you're putting cargo in an impact crate and then, you know, hauling that huge thing up into your car. It's not happening. It's not possible. And also, like you said too, there are times where you're choosing to do the training and the working through it. And then there's other times where you just have to do the thing. And so we come up with very clear ways of distinguishing that for our dogs. So like you said, your hand on her collar was a signal that today we're just doing this. We're just getting in. This isn't a time where you have a choice. There are some times you do. This is not one of them. So this is your signal. You're getting in the car. I was listening to someone talk the other day about positive trainers and about how, you know, if their dog won't get a shot because it's unpleasant, you know, like reacts to getting a shot, that they won't do it, that they only do it if the dog signs onto it. They were talking about something called cooperative care, which I am a huge proponent of. It's basically teaching your dog to give consent for different husbandry behaviors, things that you need done. Now, that's something I'm working really hard on with Nellie. And I really love cooperative care. I think it's a great thing. I think anytime we can give our dogs more choice, it's a good thing. And part of working on the cooperative care is not actually to get to the vet and say, here, you have a choice whether or not you get a shot. That's not the goal. The goal is that we give them a choice in all of the training they're doing ahead of time, like working with the car. We're giving them choices in all these steps leading up. So that way we can go through some of the behaviors and get them used to it. So that way when it is time to go to the vet, they're like, oh yeah, no problem. I'll just sit here and take my treats. Not a big deal. I know what to do through this and I can be okay. And part of the reason too why that's so great is that dogs who can be calm and hang out and, you know, do a chin rest or whatever they need to do while they're at their vet, they actually get much better comprehensive vet visits than a dog who is really stressed and has to be held down to do the things. Now, are there times where Nellie has had to be held and muzzled to have a shot? Yeah. And that's what we did. That's what we do. She needs the shots, we do it. Yep. But for her regular vet visits, if I can get her to a spot where she's comfortable and she's totally fine with a strange man putting a stethoscope on her belly and palpating her belly, and she's calm and her heart rate is normal, the doctor is going to have a much better idea of her baseline so that when there is a problem, it's easier to recognize. It's so much more than just, oh, my dog doesn't like the vet, so we don't do it. That's not what we're talking about at all. That's not.
No, not even a little bit.
I think with nail trims, like one of my workarounds while we're working on nail trims is to get them to scratch on a board. And for some people, again, management, that's perfectly effective. That's great, and it works for them. but I like to do it while also working on clippers, because clippers are just faster. It's just much easier. It's just, but it's definitely not like, oh, my dog decided that they don't want an oral examination today, so we're not going to do it. That they have to have their teeth looked at, especially when there's a problem. They're really not going to want to do it then, but they have to do it. So yeah, there's some things they just have to do.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. And there's a long list of things that you have to do. And then the things that you're not comfortable with, we're going to add a training plan.
Sure.
So that way we can make sure that you are comfortable with it. Yeah. Like Cargo gets chiropractic visits. All my dogs get chiropractic visits. But for part of it, she has to lay on her side. And so I realized at the last visit that she was feeling very uncomfortable with laying down on her side in the exam room. So we're putting laying on your side on cue at home. If she needs a chiropractic visit before that is a trained behavior, then I'm just going to pull her feet out from under her and flip her on her side. Like, that's just,
yeah,
get it done. So, but as a trainer, I'm going to try to make sure that all of these things make my dog feel a lot more confident about the situation. And it kind of goes along the same lines. My best friend has a 5-year-old. So she's had to go in for her like yearly checkups and things like that. And one of the things that makes her feel better is that they walk through all of the things that the doctor is going to do at home before they get to the doctor's office. And they talk about it, and she gets to see the stethoscope, and she gets to look, see the eye thing, and it's just a toy, it's not a real one, it's just a toy thing, but they put it in, like, look at her eye and look at her ear and show her that these are the things that are going to happen. And I feel like it helps the dogs also, because you can then tell them, hey, this is a thing that's going to happen. Remember this thing that we did at home. Now just do it here. Are you okay? And it gives the dog a way to say, I'm okay. Let's continue.
Yeah, versus the only time they ever do it is when they're already nervous. They can smell all these other dogs. They're in a small, very echoey room. There's no escape. Like, if we can work on these things at home and get them used to it, we're much better off. I know we talked about this kind of being our last myth, but I actually just wanted to touch on quick, because we're doing positive training myths. I don't know how to phrase it exactly as a myth, but I kind of wanted to talk about what positive training means, in terms of there is a lot of misuse of the term positive. I actually don't think with some of the things I do, I would be considered a positive trainer all the way, because I do things like tell my dog no. Some people would think that that's not positive training, or because I use negative reinforcement. So just a breakdown of when the term positive comes from: positive reinforcement based, and I do use like so much positive reinforcement. But when we're talking about the quadrants, you have 4 quadrants. You have positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. And so positive reinforcement is when a behavior you like happens, you reinforce that behavior, usually with food, but it can be environmental, it can be toys, there's lots more to go in there. We don't have to do that today. Positive punishment is doing things where you are adding something, you are adding a stimulus to reduce that behavior from happening again in the future. So that would be things like collar popping, like leash popping your dog when they pull out ahead of you or something. That would be a positive punishment. You are doing something to stop that behavior from happening in the future. Negative reinforcement, the most common example I see of negative reinforcement is, a dog who's at the end of the fence and they're barking at the dog walking by, and they then think that they have stopped the bark. They have stopped the dog walking by. The dog has moved through and has left them because they were barking that whole time. They got the scary thing to go away. In terms of training, negative reinforcement would be things like putting pressure on a harness or putting a lot of pressure on the leash and then letting go as soon as your dog moves back to you, or that kind of thing. And then what did I miss? I did 3 of them.
Negative punishment.
Negative punishment is an example too, like when we talked about with dogs looking for attention. If your dog is jumping on you when you get in the door, you turn around and you ignore them. You are removing that reward that they're looking for in hopes that you're stopping the behavior. So we do use negative punishment sometimes, even though I do mostly consider myself a positive trainer. I have also heard of people describing themselves as positive trainers because they use positive punishment. And technically, I mean, it's not wrong. It's not what's meant when people say positive training, but I mean, you are using a positive quadrant. It's just not really a super wonderful experience. But so I just want to talk about that. Do you have thoughts on that, Crystal, on use of like saying things like no, removing, we do use punishment. We do use punishment.
So every trainer ever training any behavior is working in all 4 of the quadrants, depending on what you're looking for. So with the quadrants, we want to keep in mind that positive and negative is not good and bad. It's adding or removing. And that reinforcement and punishment is also not good and bad. It's increasing a behavior or reducing a behavior. And so at any given point with any given behavior, we can operate in multiple quadrants. It's just the semantics that get a little hairy. So a lot of us are called positive reinforcement trainers. But again, just like any other trainer, we are still working in all of the quadrants. We also want to, we kind of want to define what those methods are. And so then we can kind of go into like force-free or fear-free. And even that gets a little bit hairy because we're using force because we're putting a leash on the dog.
Yeah.
And fear-free isn't necessarily fear-free because sometimes your dog just has to do things that are scary. Like they just have to, and there's nothing that you can do about it. So labels get really weird there. I like the term science-based training, because all of the research and all like the real research, not like the internet research, not the Facebook research, like the real research with the researchers in the laboratories and the psychologists, are all saying that using reinforcement to increase the behaviors that you like is the most effective and most efficient method to train behaviors. So at the end of the day, the labels don't really matter. It's just you want to make sure that the person that you're working with or the trainer that you're working with is very versed in the science behind training. There's lots and lots of years of wives' tales and lots of years of, hey, this has worked for 50 years. But thankfully in the last 20 years or so, people have really started to look in depth at these things with a scientific lens. And so then we want to make sure that the people that are working with your dog are really current on that research and they're not falling back to, well, it worked for 50 years, so it will also work for your dog.
Well, and a lot of those things work. They've been used for 50 years because they do work. But does that mean it's the best thing for you and your dog? No. It's also that line of, yes, you want someone who's based in scientific principles, who understands all of the science and learning theory that goes into it. But science isn't always ethical. So you kind of want that dual, when you're looking for a trainer, you kind of want that dual science and ethical. I don't want to judge anyone else's ethics. I guess anyone can call themselves ethical. It's a very personal thing. But you do kind of want to look at a trainer's ethics, and are they doing what is mentally best for your dog? Or are they just doing what works because it has worked for, I mean, lots of methods, they do work. I mean,
Absolutely. 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 Yeah.
You can train your dog on a shock collar. You can absolutely do it. There is some debate over whether that's actually training and learning, because if you have to continue to wear a device or carry around a device forever, did that dog actually learn anything? Did you really reduce those bad behaviors, or are you just managing them? That's a debate to be had. I don't even go there. It's, for me, I don't want to shock my dog. And I don't have to, because so much research has been done. So many people have done so much work to find better ways of doing things.
Yeah.
We just don't have to use those things anymore.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And your trainer owes it to you to be current on those methods and understand how to reach your goals without resorting to those types of tools.
Yeah. All right, so that is the end of our episode on myths about positive dog training for today. I'm sure in the future we will have lots of other episodes about various dog and training myths, and more about what positive reinforcement training actually is. But for today, you guys can all go home. You learned enough. And we'll see you next time in a couple weeks.